Hope for a better world. Just in the next room. You guys want to take chairs and we'll hand it off to anyone, okay?
Sure. I hope they're still cool. I put them in the shade.
They're fine.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So go ahead and be seated. Thank you. Yeah. So this weekend is dedicated to the proposition of hope for a better world. It is a theme that Swami Kriyananda put into play based on his attunement and feeling for what Yogananda was trying to bring into this world. Ananda has stood for it forever. Ananda Laurelwood is an expression of that, an extension of what happened last night, if you will, with the different religious expressions, traditions, holding themselves and shining the same light through their tradition that Yogananda spoke to, and which Kriya gives each one of us, regardless of our outer tradition, directly as an experience. Laurelwood does two things, Ananda Laurelwood. It was born, of course, of the Kriya Yoga self-realization tradition, but that tradition is based specifically in direct inner communion with God, and then to live from that space. And it's interesting, the deeper we go in Kriya Yoga, in communion, the more we feel ourselves one with everything outside, everything, heart to heart, center to center. Ananda Laurelwood holds retreats, and we have, across the years, it's been 6 years now that we've been here, we've hosted everything from step-up camps, which is a service to at-risk youth in inner city that have never, many of them have never been outside of the city or outside of their block, and they come and all of this opens up, and the vibration that's here, and vegetarian cooking and all kinds of things, to Ananda programs. We hosted a Tibetan Buddhist cleric or lama who had been in seclusion for about 5 years and came out and was making a national tour. We hosted them for about 10 days last year. National University of Natural Medicine has an annual program, 2-week program here, healing program. We've had Ravi Shankar's group. We've had the colleges have come. We've had a nonviolent communication for those who are familiar. Basically, it's a container where whatever your aspiration is that's toward the light, this environment supports that. And that's a lot of what provides hope for a better world, is that commonality, that universality of connection, that we're all sons and daughters of the same God, and that we share the same aspirations, the same light. Well, about 2 or 3 years into the development of Ananda Laurelwood, Janaka Devi and Vyasa came, and they said, I woke up this morning and we had this vision for a garden centered around Yogananda's teachings for world peace. And what do you think about that? I said, well, what do you think about it? And she said, well, I think it's a true vision. And so we said, well, then I feel pretty good about it. And she started, the two of them started from that point on, working toward trying to find the genuine expression of that inspiration and that vision. And it has evolved to this point here. Do you want to talk about that for a couple of minutes?
Sure.
Okay.
So Daiva reached for his cell phone and called a number, and he said that it was Gary Roller in New Mexico, and the fellow answered. I mean, which is really amazing for Gary, because he's a southwestern singer in that area, and he's very busy. And we got to talk to him, and he gave me the cell phone, and I got to tell him what was happening. And he said, well, that's funny, because it was just this morning on my walk. I do walk up down to the park every day, and I was just thinking that it's time for another, what he calls a Kriya statue, or a statue of Yogananda. And I said, well, here we are. We've got an order for you. And so it's been a lot of coincidences along the path, and so far we've gotten to the place where the small statue is made. So that's what do they call that? The maquette. And so that's available for people to buy and have in their homes and draw inspiration from. And it also helps support. That's what I was going to do. I was going to bring a donation bottle. I am so bad at that. I didn't do that. But anyway, that helps support this 8-foot statue. We went round and round about, should it be 6 feet, should it be 7 feet, should it be 8 feet, and it seemed like the men eventually kind of felt that 8 feet was right. So now we've got a good sized statue on our hands in the making. And so now it's in the what they call the master mold form. So they've made the mold for it, and next it goes to the foundry to be poured in bronze. But of course, we've got to wait for a little while until we get the money. So that's the step we're in. And we also want to put get the plaza started out here on the top. People ask, well, where is the statue going to be? Well, Charles came to visit, and he said that he felt we were going to put it where this sign is up here, and he felt that it wanted to be in the middle of the field there where the point of energy was. He felt that point, and that's what he is holding out for. But he's coming back in September, and then at that point we'll find the final place that will actually start the plaza for the statue. So thank you all very much for coming and being with us on the land.
The latest thought of the property, the garden itself is about 15 acres, and the thought is to actually invite different groups to traditions to place a shrine within the gardens, so that we can. As the path wanders through, you can walk past or through and meditate in different centers to the different spiritual traditions of the world, and the invitation is, of course, for them to then maintain them in the style and vibration that they would like to hold, so that this becomes actually a Hope for a Better World sanctuary, or a meditation sanctuary for all traditions and beauty for all paths. The process of evolving these things takes step by step, bringing in the blessings. It's not just a piece of property, it's not just a statue, but to imbue it with life. It takes repeated bringing consciousness and focus and energy to the site, to the vision, and until it becomes alive, and the statue becomes a murti, and the property becomes, the land becomes hallowed by that energy. And with Jyotish and Devi, and they're carrying that vibration globally for Master and for the ray that is Ananda. It's a great blessing to have you here to share with us and to help us all imbue this land with even more of the presence of God through these masters. You want to say anything?
I just want to say, as we were getting out of the car, we saw Janaki Devi and Vyasa, and we said, well, you guys be the MCs. And they said, no, we're just the gardeners here. And we're like, you guys are not just the gardeners here. You are the visionaries, and thank you for having the courage. Thank you for, I know you had the vision, but then to carry it through, even not knowing, pulling this out of the ether and creating a meditation sanctuary for the world. the world, it will be blessed, and it is hope for a better world in its essence. And I was going to say, you forgot to bring something for donations. We have a hat. Anyway, thank you everyone for being a part of this.
So if the two of you will start us off with a prayer, and then we'll have a couple pieces of music, and then we'll do a blessing. And I think there's a special tree.
Where's the tree?
It's right there.
We have an oak tree that we planted in honor of today. It'll be planted in the spring or in the fall when it's more appropriate. But it's a live oak, or it's a white oak, and that is a white oak over there. That beautiful, magnificent acorn-shaped tree right there. That's the growth habit. It's approximately 60 or 70 feet tall and 100 feet wide, and it's centuries old to get to that point.
We're going to come back in another lifetime.
Yeah, life after life. So anyway, that'll be planted right back up in that area to help hold the energy and really tie this vision into. It's a native plant, and it holds a lot of power. So it'll tie these worlds together a little bit more. So anyway, thank you.
Let's all stand. And God chooses sacred spots, but God acts through all of us also. And so feel that all of us, and especially Janaki Devi and Daiva and Gangamata and others who have already poured tremendous energy into this project, feel that we're all channels of light and channels of God's blessings to bring a sacred energy and ground it on earth. Let's pray together. Heavenly Father, Divine Mother, Friend, beloved God, Jesus Christ, Babaji Krishna, Lahiri Mahashaya, Swami Sri Yukteswar, beloved Guru, Paramahansa Yogananda Ji, Saints of all religions, we humbly bow to you all. Beloved Masters, we ask for your blessings on this site, on this project, and on the Murti that will represent thy presence on earth. Guide our steps. Enhance our dedication. Infuse us and this site with thy sacred vibration. Om. Peace. Amen. Please be seated. I'll say a few words about the importance. Did you want to?
No, after.
Okay. I'll say a few words about the importance of what this is today. We're dedicating the site. When the statue is here, then we'll come back and have a special ceremony dedicating that statue, because at that time, what we need to do, even though God's presence is everywhere, there are certain places where it's as if His presence wakes up and is more energized than other places. It's true especially that it wakes up in the saints and the great masters, but it also wakes up in certain places physically, and those places that have been dedicated to God. And so this whole community here, but especially this site, is very consciously being dedicated to God and dedicated to living a kind of a reality that is not very present on earth at this point. There was a remarkable story that happened a few years ago. Most of you probably have seen the movie Finding Happiness, and the actress who played Juliet, Elizabeth Rome, still keeps a connection with Ananda. And she has a daughter. At the time, the daughter was about 5 or 6 years old. and they visited Ananda, and both of them loved being there. But we were driving them to the airport after just a brief stay, 2 or 3 days, and little Easton, we gave her the name Kumari, so little Kumari was in the back seat, and she said, "Mommy, I had a really interesting dream last night." And of course we said, "Well, tell us about it." She said, "I was swimming at the pond at Ananda." For those of you who know Ananda Village, this is the pond just above where the goat herd has its little shed there, called Nandi Pond. So she said, "I was swimming in the pond, and all of these fairies started flying around. And then the queen fairy came to me. I knew she was the queen because she was the one with the long golden hair and the golden skin. And she came and she said, 'Can you help us?' She said, 'We are not very welcome in this world anymore. We used to be welcome, but we're not very welcome in this world anymore. We're welcome at Ananda, but we're having trouble finding places where we can be. Can you help us find more places?' And so it was a beautiful dream, but highly symbolic. The sacred energy is having a hard time finding places where it's welcome on this earth. In a high society, in Vedic times, it was understood that you start with the high vibration. You start with God's presence. And if you have God's presence, the details begin to take care of themselves. Society orders itself properly. It governs itself properly. Material wealth, material abundance is an extension of God's presence. Everything comes into alignment. When you start at the bottom, where you start on the material plane, and you don't recognize the need for the sacred, nothing comes into alignment. And what we see, the problems in the world today, it's not based, as we were saying last night, it's not based on politics. It's not based on the wrong person or the wrong people. It's based on the wrong vibration. It's the vibration of what primarily is being worshipped is materialism. And when materialism takes the top post, then there's nowhere to go, because it's important. Material success, wealth, Master talked about it a great deal, but it should be the foundation upon which higher consciousness is built. And if you forget the higher consciousness, then you're going to have trouble. And so it is extremely important, if we have a hope for a better world, that places dedicated to bringing that spiritual consciousness, to welcoming the devas, which the fairy represented, to welcoming that sacred energy, that those places exist. And it's very important that a site like this exists, because it becomes the physical centering point by which the divine can ascend. You know, when there's a big thunderstorm and lightning with the clouds, what happens is that the clouds end up, because they roil each other and they're banging, the molecules there, it ends up with an electrical charge, but that electrical charge is up there in the clouds. What happens is that from the earth, usually the high point of an area, a little tiny stream of energy goes up. You can't even see it, you can't feel it, but a little stream of energy goes up and connects to that cloud, and then the lightning strike has a pathway to come down, and that tremendous bolt, millions of volts of energy, comes down in that stream that has been opened up. Our devotion, our yearning for God, our recognition of the sacred, our welcoming of the devas is that little tiny stream that goes up. And it doesn't seem very important, But without it, the great energy does not descend. And so this site represents a place dedicated to that point at which we lift up our energy so that the divine can come and make it truly sacred. Because we spend a lot of time in India, we go around, and India understands the importance of sacredness and the importance of sacred sites. So if you ask an American, where have you been in the last 10 years? They might say Disneyland or New York City or maybe a national park, Yosemite or Yellowstone or something. But rarely does an American say, I was on pilgrimage to a sacred site. Because there aren't many sacred sites, and because nobody goes on pilgrimage, there aren't many sacred sites here. But now we need to create those sacred sites. If you ask an Indian, they're likely to say, oh, 7 years ago I visited Badrinath. And why is Badrinath holy? Because it has been holy from ancient times, and it has a murti there. In fact, it has a miraculous murti. Many of you have heard of the beginning of the Swami order, the Adi Shankara. He visited that site, which from ancient times, it's like there are ley lines in the earth. There are sacred points in the earth. And that's why it's important that Charles is trying to feel where that energy point is in this locale. So in Badrinath, there was an ancient temple, but it had become desecrated, and the murti that was there, Badrinarayan, was taken and thrown into the river. And the Shankaracharya came to that site, and he said, there is a murti in the river, and it's very, very holy. You go find it. And he pointed to where it was. And they tried, and they couldn't find it. He said, try again. They still couldn't find it. He said, try again, dig deeper. And they dug down, and they found a murti there that had been somewhat eroded by the washing of the river over it, the Ganges. But they found it. And they brought that and installed it. And it's kept sacred. You don't see very many photos of it, but once in a while you see a glimpse of it. It looks astoundingly like what we have as the statue of Babaji. The exact same shape, except that the details are gone because it's been eroded. But see, there's a sacredness that continues. So you ask an Indian, and they'll say, oh, 7 years ago I went to Badrinath. It was so wonderful. And so what we need as a culture is to create sacred points, points of pilgrimage, points at which people can come and raise their energy up. And then the divine will descend down in response to that. And this is such a point. So today we're dedicating this site, and when the statue is ready, then we'll dedicate the statue. Then it will cease to be a statue. It will become a true murti, an icon of holiness that has the descent of the sacred, the descent of the divine. In this case, because it's a murti of Master, it will have this descent and the power of His grace that comes into that. So we await the completion, and we'll all have to gather again at least one more time.
I'll just speak briefly because we have music and other things. Having the opportunity, as Jyotish and I do, to go all over the world seeing the development of Ananda, it's fascinating because we see at the village, for example, a new temple is underway. In Assisi, they're in the midst of constructing a larger new temple. In the Pune retreat in India, they're putting up a temple. But we the beautiful thing about watching Ananda globally expand is that it isn't, it's multidimensional. It isn't just, oh, we're building this building and that building, but we're creating a higher vibration through many different expressions. And what this meditation sanctuary, I love the name, perfect. What it represents is a holy place, not so locked into external form the way a building would be. And just when one of the pivotal points in Ananda's history was when Swami Kriyananda created the Hermitage Gardens at Ananda Village. And he said, we need places, he didn't say where the Devas could come, but just places that aren't so bound by form, where there can be a fluid expression of the divine. And we need that to keep a balanced flow. Master's mission to the West, I think we don't even have a little peek at what it really is going to be into the future. But if we can create multi-dimensional expressions of the sacred, maybe someday we'll just build a big pond of water with a fountain somewhere. Water, earth, fire, not so much fire, but but air, and all of the sacred elements. If we can imbue them, and people will come and they say, yes, I felt the power of the wind, I felt the power of the air, I felt, and then they'll go into a building and they'll feel the power of solidity. But it's a very subtle thing, and we are so very appreciative to particularly Janaki Devi and Vyasa for having a very subtle vision and trying to bring it into manifestation, because honestly it's easier to build a building than to do something subtle. Buildings, we all know how to do that. Drawing God down into a more formless, amorphous place is harder because people don't see what it is at first. But when you do it with God, of course. But anyway, this is, and I think instead of calling it a Yogananda garden, calling it a meditation sanctuary, I'm a word person. People say they're a foodie. I'm a wordy, and I think that name will bring it to fruition. It's what it was trying to be. So I think we're going to have some music. Is that correct? And then we'll bless the white oak. And thank you all for joining us. And may Master's blessings and the blessings of all higher beings shower down on this sacred space, and keep it in the spirit of openness and freedom that the world so much needs.
Can bring about an awakening of God's presence. Music can do that same thing. It can bring a presence of something unspeakable, of something undefinable, but many of us felt it last night. And just as the lightning bolt comes down to those who lift their energies, we ask you to join your energies with ours as we help dedicate this land with these sacred songs, which have been dedicated to God, which have been sung with devotion, with that consciousness of bringing that presence, even fleetingly for the length of the song, into a tangible reality. The two songs we'd like to offer are by Swami Kriyananda, entitled Home is a Green Hill and What is Love?
my soul. Home is forever, home is today. Home's a heart that is whole. Often I dream that life is a play, laughter forever and skies never gray. But when I'm silent, freed from all care, I discover my homes everywhere. Home is a green hill, home is a wind, blowing betrayal far, far away. Home is the knowledge heaven is near. Home's the end of the What is love? Is it only ours? Or does love whisper in the flowers? Surely we, children of this world, could not love by our own powers. What is joy? Is it just a dream? Or does joy laugh in every stream? Are the clouds mindless after all? Or is joy all nature's theme? God is dead, so men say, and they see all life's display. Not a church binds him as its own, not a creed makes him fully known. Foolish we, if we limit him, every atom is his throne. What is love? Is it only ours? Or does love whisper in the flowers? Surely we, children of this world, could not love by our own powers. What is love? What is love? Is it love we touch in the
So let's just make a heart connection with this divine friend, this white oak tree. Just look over at what it can become over there. and the potential inherent, just as the potential in all of us, as we stand here now, will someday be so much greater than we can know. And so let's form a heart connection with this friend from the plant Deva realm. And may it be a symbol of unity with life, human, plant, astral, divine. That's what this meditation sanctuary represents. So project your love, the God's love, to this friend. And let's do a little prayer. O Divine Masters,
O Divine Masters,
bless this beautiful white oak
bless this beautiful white oak
as a symbol of the nature kingdom,
as a symbol of the nature kingdom,
which we revere
which we revere
and honor.
and honor.
And may throughout the world of nature,
throughout the world
of nature,
Nature.
may the plants and oceans and animals of this world remember
May the plants and oceans and animals of this world remember
that they are loved and honored.
that they are loved and honored.
May the water be pure.
May the water be pure.
May the air be clear.
May the air be clear.
May the plants be filled with prana.
May the plants be filled with prana.
And may all life forms
And may all life forms
on this planet
on this planet
be blessed with divine consciousness.
be blessed with divine consciousness.
Let's rub our hands, send blessings to this tree as a symbol of the world of nature, which humanity needs to honor and cherish. Peace. Amen. Bill?
Bill.
Bill?
Oh, come forward. Bill has asked us for a spiritual name, and we promised to give that to him today. So it seems fitting in this sacred site among all of his friends that he received this name. We're going to bless him with the name Bindu. It means friend or friendship, divine in the form of a friend. And so it's a
B-I-N-D-U. Bindu. Bless you with his name.
right.
Thank you.